Hey, welcome back. Danny Thompson here, your host on Countdown to Restoration, where we're counting down the days of the Biden regime, which we are learning is more horrible as every day goes by. Yeah, some days you say, oh, it's just better every day. It's just bad every day, isn't it? Scary. As we look into the life of the thief in chief. The thief in chief, yeah. Thank you, buddy. Have a good rest of the day. Episode 135 here. We look into the life he's forcing us to live. Today, I don't know how today's going to go. But if you want to look at yesterday, Rumble channel DANWT or YouTube channel Danny Thompson. Yesterday, the day before that, or all of our shows, they are there. And I want to start off saying thank you. If you've been watching, our viewership has gone up. And we do appreciate that. We always appreciate our viewers, and feel free to share. Now today there's just so much. We're going to look at a few things to start, and then we're going to get into some in-depth on Biden himself, and we'll just jump in. Why explain it? You know, this explains everything. It won't work. All right. We'll go to that. Okay, Dr. Richard and Rachel Levine, we just do it because, you know, they're just so annoying. It's just so annoying. This man thinks he is acting like he's a woman. He knows he's a man. He knows it. And the Biden people, they know it, and they lie to us every day. Dr. Richard is Dr. Rachel. Dr. Rachel is Richard. I don't like this. And this person wants to do what he does to all young men. I mean, it's just wrong, and it's backwards, and it shows the people in charge of the Biden regime don't know what they're doing. What do you think, Tammy?
Sometimes it's hard to after all, he's just a man. Stand by your man.
Yes, stand by your man. Richard, Rachel, whoever. It's aggravating. It's aggravating. We've got some COVID news. All right, we're just gonna move on into it. All right, I've got some good, something good on Dr. Richard and Rachel, their category tomorrow. But anyway, Johnny, take us out of this. Not feeling boogie woogie, and that's every other scientist in the world right now except for Dr. Rachel Walensky. I don't know, just because you're a doctor, does that make you a scientist? I don't know. I mean, are medical doctors really considered scientists? Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I've never really discussed it with one. Hey, doc, are you a scientist? I don't know. U.S. COVID hospital deaths hit February levels as ICUs overflow. Alabama's need outstrips supply, and 4 states top 90% capacity. Fatalities dim hopes for a wave that would prove less lethal. So, it's not looking good on the Delta front. But Dr. Walensky says that we might not need an annual COVID booster after third shot. Of course, she has no idea, ladies and gentlemen. She's just saying that. They're just trying to make everybody feel better because people are starting to worry. Are we going to have to get shots all the time? Well, these people are worried because the CDC jumped on the bandwagon so soon. U.S. officials' decision on COVID-19 booster shots baffles and upsets some scientists. Not just baffles them, but upsets them. When you have baffled scientists, that can't be good, right? We're scientists and we're baffled. But then Isn't that what you are? To be a scientist, don't you have to be a perpetually baffled person so that you will pursue answers in a scientific manner, which most scientists do not do any longer, at least the popular ones. The Biden administration's decision to start authorizing third doses of COVID-19 vaccine in September is being met with bafflement, concern, and even anger from a number of immunologists, vaccinologists, and people steeped in the normal way such decisions are made. Now, this from the "we will only follow the science" people of the Biden regime. Yeah, they haven't done that since they got in. I mean, it's all political. It's been political from the beginning. There may be scientific basis behind it. First of all, it's the novel coronavirus. It's new. It's novel. No one knows, except maybe Dr. Anthony Fauci, who had insight into its creation that he denies, and I'm just suggesting that based on testimony and emails and other such data that seem to be informative that Facebook and YouTube and others may not agree with, but hey, it's out there. Many flat out challenge the need for booster doses at this time. Others question the morality of administering third shots to Americans when most people on the planet haven't received one. Well, that's just the American way. We always have more than everybody else, so there. I don't know. I mean, what good is it if we all get one shot and everybody gets one shot and we all stand around? I don't know. And why? Too much to go into there, and I've got more show than this. And some worried that a decision had been made before the Food and Drug Administration had ruled on the need for a booster, or a key vaccine advisory committee had evaluated the data, typically the way vaccine policy is set. So we're already going outside the norm. Yeah. Why? Because the Biden people, they know this is just not good on them. The government's top public health officials on Wednesday pointed to data showing that the mRNA vaccines developed by the Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna are no longer protecting as well against mild and moderate COVID-19 infections as evidence that could, you notice it's in quotation, signal a decline in protection against serious disease. But could is not a very strong word. It's not as strong as would. WOULD. Yes. But could is not a very strong word, especially to make a policy decision on. Norman Baylor. Well, that's what the Biden people do. Every policy decision is formulated on the word could. I mean, really. Look at it. Norman Baylor, president and CEO of Biologics Consulting and a former head of the FDA's Office of Vaccines, told STAT, the journal. Anna Durbin, a vaccines researcher at Johns Hopkins University, no less, said the vaccines continue to be highly effective in preventing hospitalizations, severe infections, and deaths among most vaccinees. I didn't know that was a word, did you? You, if you have the vaccine, are a vaccinee. Makes sense. Should be vaccination-y, maybe. But that's too much of the same sound. I don't know. They may not work as well over time in preventing mild illnesses among those vaccinated. Isn't necessarily a sign the vaccines are failing, said Durbin, who insisted that people are going to need to accept that fact. We cannot keep boosting and say we're going to prevent colds in everybody, she said. Ah, the heartless woman. And she's relating this to colds. Huh. Anybody else that did that in the past were hung in at least in effigy, right? The decision to boost so early in the country's use of the vaccines isn't science-based in Durbin's view. I think there's this tidal wave building that's based on anxiety, and I don't think it's based on scientific evidence that a booster is needed. Wow. And I'm just wondering, can this be posted on Facebook and everything? Because who sets what science? The administration or scientists? It's a pretty good question. To many experts, including Baylor, the sequencing, thank you, of the decisions being made is also out of whack. That's a scientific term. While U.S. health officials said booster shots could start being offered the week of September 20, the Food and Drug Administration has not even ruled yet on Pfizer's application for approval of a third shot. It was filed only Monday. Moderna hasn't yet asked the agency to authorize a third shot at all. How many think the FDA is not going to authorize a third shot? No. At present, the extra dose policy only applies to the Pfizer BioNTech and Moderna vaccines. People who receive the one-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine continue to wait for guidance about whether they need another dose. So if they do give you the Johnson & Johnson, they tell you might need a shot of Pfizer or Moderna. Meanwhile, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, which reviews data on vaccines and makes recommendations on their use to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, is set to meet next week to look at the data for a third dose. Before Wednesday's announcement, there was no suggestion a vote might be taken next Tuesday. The group may need additional sessions to address the question. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy insisted the booster dose program would only go ahead if sanctioned by the FDA and the ACIP as the CDC excuse me, advisory committee is known. But the fact that there is a fixed date for the start of the booster program led some to wonder if the outcome had already been decided. Wow. Man, it couldn't be. Not in the Biden regime. Come on. Not there. All right. I can't. Sorry, had a little glitch there. There we go. How did you pick the week of September 20th, asked Baylor, since this meeting hasn't occurred and you don't know what they're going to say? This is an independent body. Suppose they say, we don't think so. Then what are you going to do with that? Well, just be more stupidity on the Biden regime's face. Grace Lee, professor of pediatrics at Stanford University School of Medicine and ACIP chair, insisted the group will conduct the review the way it always does in sessions that are open to the public. When we can review that data, when we can review it with the public, when we can deliberate on the decisions, we'll provide our best scientific advice and opinions, she told Stat. We will give our best possible advice based on what we see. And they're going to say we need more. How can they go against? If they do, what would the Biden people say? Oh, we always said it was based on them. Then why did you roll out the president from his vacation and tell everybody's going to start? Jesse Goodman, a former chief scientist at the FDA, who is now a professor of medicine at Georgetown University, was concerned about the administration's decision to announce the plan before that process was played out. Goodman believes booster shots will eventually be needed, and that is prudent to plan for that eventuality. But I'm not sure we had enough data to pull the trigger right now, he said. In the heat of the moment and when we're all dealing with a real public health emergency, it becomes almost doubly important that we continually reassess and have the normal processes in place. And I do worry that we not put the cart before the horse, said Goodman. Lot of cart putting before horses these days. I would have preferred that this had been vetted a little bit more, said Paul Alford, a vaccine expert from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, who is on an expert committee that advises the FDA on vaccines. This just seems to be a declaration without the kind of vetting you would like to have seen. Like Goodman, Alford thinks boosters may eventually be needed, but he's not convinced they are needed now. Almost all the evidence to date suggests protection against severe disease is still holding and may well last several years, he said. So the notion that we are trying to get ahead of it by boosting after 8 months, I think is premature, he said, also arguing that using more doses in the U.S. will inevitably slow vaccination in low-income countries, which makes us the good guy providing the vaccine, but the bad guy for using it up, I guess. Scott Hensley, a vaccines researcher at the University of Pennsylvania's Penn Institute for Immunology, shared those concerns. Anyone who thinks that vaccinating Americans with a third dose is not going to come at the expense of getting the vaccine to other places in the world, if that's what you think, you're just kidding yourself. Hensley suggested the vaccines will appear to be doing what they were designed to do, even if some vaccinated people are having mild infections. A year and a half ago, if someone told you you could have a vaccine that's 95% effective at keeping you out of the hospital and keeping you alive, you would have jumped at that, he said. I don't know. A lot of us haven't jumped yet, have we? Wishing some people jumped ship, but that's a whole nother story. All right, let's do some money stuff real quick. Music stopped. Jobless claims. Wow, just almost lost my voice there, didn't I? Jobless claims hit new pandemic era low in a sign of hope for the employment picture. Jobless claims totaled 348,000 for the week ended August 14th, below the estimate for 365,000 and down 29,000 from the week before. Continuing claims fell to 2.82 million as both counts marked new pandemic era lows. A separate report showed that manufacturing growth in the Philadelphia region was lower than expected. Yeah. But if you are disabled and have a student loan, the man who can't cancel student loans is canceling student loans. He has no constitutional authority to do so, doesn't think he can, and yet he can. Makes sense, doesn't it? Yes. Biden cancels $5.8 billion of student loans for disabled borrowers. So it's kind of like the eviction ban. We can, but we can't. So we're going to find a way to do it. It's not constitutional, but we're going to do it anyway because, hey, that's what we do in government. Here's what you need to know. They say student loans in the single largest student loan cancellation of his presidency so far. Biden enacted student loan cancellation for 323,000 student loan borrowers who have a total and permanent disability, TPD, total permanent disability. The automatic student loan discharge will occur through an existing data match with the U.S. Social Security Administration starting next month. As part of this significant student loan forgiveness, the Education Department will also implement the following changes to make it easier to get student loan forgiveness. This includes, and probably won't be limited to, stop asking these student loan borrowers for their income to qualify for student loan cancellation and pursue the elimination of the 3-year income monitoring period. Today's action removes a major barrier that prevented far too many borrowers with disabilities from receiving the total and permanent disability discharges they are entitled to under the law, U.S. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona said. From day one, I've stressed that the Department of Education is a service agency. We serve students, educators, and families across the country to ensure that educational opportunity is available to all. Excuse me, we've heard loud and clear from borrowers with disabilities and advocates about the need for this change, and we are excited to follow through on it. This change reduces red tape with the aim of making processes as simple as possible for borrowers who need support. Now, where's the money go? I mean, is it just nobody just doesn't get paid back? Nobody gets it. It's just gone. Fly like a bird. Yeah, gone. Go away, money. Go away, fly away. Hey, Joe. Just sign the thing. Get rid of everybody's debt. Why not? Whatever it is. Hey, no more debt. I like it. It's just, we don't need money. We're a communist country. China is copying us on ways to get more money and everything. So, hey, we're setting the pace for the world. Just cancel debt. Why do they never do that? I don't know. And I'm not for that, obviously. If you haven't watched, I'm being facetious. Sometimes this may shock you to learn I can be a little sarcastic. Yeah, I know. Shocking to me, but I have to admit it. I'm trying to find a group, Sarcasm Anonymous, but they were sarcastic in their meaning. So, now we're going to look at some Biden stuff, and I have to tell you, I've been upset a lot of the morning looking into things. I mean, we've all known that Biden has something wrong with him. We know that. We know he's not stable. And if anything, this week has shown it. Now, we're going to do a little welcome to my world. We're going to dip into a few important facts, I guess, on what's happening in Afghanistan. And remember, your loving, charming, sometimes sarcastic host is all in favor of us not being in Afghanistan. We should have never done what we did, and if we were going to do what we did, we should have done it. But Biden is messing everything up. And of course, he's focusing on getting out, and then the rest of the world is focusing on how. And, we've gone over all that. So we're going to look at a couple of things, but we're just going to look at him. Because we'll do this first, all right?
Welcome to my world. Won't you come on in? Welcome to my world. Built with you in mind.
Yeah. If this had come out about Trump, the world would be nuts. We knew it. Wall Street Journal News exclusive, Putin rejected role for U.S. forces near Afghanistan at summit with Biden. So at the summit, where Biden wouldn't even really take questions, really, and why bother? Putin told him, no, we don't want you to have a residual force outside of Afghanistan in the area. And Biden, okay, we won't. Yeah, that's our great foreign policy team at work. Biden is hoping Americans focus on overall Afghanistan withdrawal, not messy exit. It's a little hard. And his big problem isn't even your average American who probably doesn't really care. It's the media, because they care. President Biden hopes to tamp down a political crisis by emphasizing that leaving Afghanistan was the right call, even if the exit is a debacle. It's a debacle, ladies and gentlemen. It's a total mess. Planes leaving half empty after Taliban set up ring of steel. That's right. They are keeping people out, so go reports. Afghans trying to board RAF flights to Britain have accused the Taliban of raising a ring of steel around the airport, beating them so they cannot leave. Government sources said that one aircraft took off with half of the expected number of people on board on Tuesday after more than 70 Britons and Afghans failed to get to the airport. And that is happening all over, but the administration is not really pushing it. This is fun. Planes, guns, night vision goggles, the Taliban's new U.S.-made war chest. Yeah, so there they are sitting on a U.S. vehicle. Yeah, it's nice. Just leave it all for them. They're actually discussing on how, if they should attack and blow up as many vehicles and helicopters and stuff. But what really worries the U.S. is the night vision goggles. So, you know, being able to fight and work at night is a game changer. And they're not happy they have that capability now. But and there's not much you can't go around and zap every night vision goggle. Maybe you can. All right, we're going to take a little time, some Uncle Joe time here, and show you as much of the interview between George Stephanopoulos, former Clinton advisor, and Joe Biden as is available.
Come ride the little train that is rolling down the tracks to the junction. Forget about your cares, it is time to relax at the junction. Lots of curves, you bet, and even more when you get to the junction.
Petticoat Junction.
There's a little hotel called the Shady Rest at the junction.
Petticoat Junction.
It is run by Kate. Come and be her guest at the junction.
Petticoat Junction.
And that's Uncle Joe. He's a moving kind of slow at the junction. Petticoat Junction.
Okay, I want to bring you this. It's a little lengthy and it's quite disturbing. And then we're going to go into some articles that, because I read the whole transcript and I encourage you to do so. Maybe just go to ABC News webpage and look up the Joe Biden interview transcript. It's quite upsetting. It's not what he says, it's the way he says it. Something's wrong, and again, we've known that, but it's accelerating, as we pointed out, that the team even knows that. And some of them are giving him till about November. I don't know, and I have some theories on this. We'll get to it in a minute, but first, this interview that I'm sure everybody wishes he hadn't have done by now.
Back in July, you said a Taliban takeover was highly unlikely. Was the intelligence wrong, or did you downplay it?
There was no consensus. You go back and look at the intelligence reports. They said that it was more likely to be sometime by the end of the year.
You didn't put a timeline on when you said it was highly unlikely. You just said flat out it's highly unlikely the Taliban would take over.
Yeah. Well, the question was whether or not the idea that the Taliban would take over was premised on the notion that somehow the 300,000 troops we had trained and equipped was going to just collapse. They were going to give up. I don't think anybody anticipated that.
Senator McConnell said it was predictable the Taliban was going to take over.
Well, by the end of the year, it said that was a real possibility. But no one said it was going to take over then when it was being asked.
When you look at what's happened over the last week, was it a failure of intelligence, planning, execution, or judgment?
Look, I don't think it was a failure. Look, it was a simple choice, George. When the Taliban, let me back it, put it another way. When you had the government of Afghanistan, the leader of that government getting in a plane and taking off and going to another country, when you saw the significant collapse of the Afghan troops we had trained, up to 300,000 of them, just leaving their equipment and taking off, that was, that's what happened. That's simply what happened. So the question was, in the beginning, the threshold question was, do we commit to leave within the time frame was set? We extended it to September 1st. Or do we put significantly more troops in? I hear people say, well, you had 2,500 folks in there and nothing was happening. You know, there wasn't any war. But guess what? The fact was that the reason it wasn't happening is the last president negotiated a year earlier that he'd be out by May 1st and that in return there'd be no attack on American forces. That's what was done. That's why nothing was happening. But the idea, if I had said, I had a simple choice. If I had said, we're going to stay, then we better be prepared to put a whole hell of a lot more troops in.
But your top military advisors warned against withdrawing on this timeline. They wanted you to keep about 2,500 troops.
No, they didn't. It was split. That wasn't true. That wasn't true.
They didn't tell you that they wanted troops to stay?
No, not in terms of whether we were going to get out in a time frame, all troops. They didn't argue against that.
So no one told your military advisors did not tell you, no, we should just keep 2,500 troops. It's been a stable situation for the last several years. We can do that. We can continue to do that.
No one said that to me that I can recall. Look, George, the reason why it's been stable for a year is because the last president said, we're leaving. And here's the deal I want to make with you, Taliban. We're agreeing to leave if you agree not to attack us between now and the time we leave on May the 1st. Less than 2 months after I was elected to office, I was sworn in, all of a sudden, I have a May 1 deadline. I got one of two choices. Do I say we're staying? And do you think we would not have to put a hell of a lot more troops? We had tens of thousands of troops there before. Tens of thousands. Do you think we would have just said no problem? Don't worry about it. We're not going to attack anybody. We're okay. In the meantime, the Taliban was taking territory all throughout the country in the north and down in the south in the Pashtun area.
So would you have withdrawn troops like this even if President Trump had not made that deal with the Taliban?
I would have tried to figure out how to withdraw those troops, yes. Because look, George, there is no good time to leave Afghanistan. 15 years ago would have been a problem. 15 years from now. The basic choice is, am I going to send your sons and your daughters to war in Afghanistan in perpetuity? No one can name for me a time when this would end. And what constitutes defeat of the Taliban? What constitutes defeat? Would we have left then? Let's say they surrender like before, okay? Do we leave then? Do you think anybody, the same people who think we should stay, would have said, no, good time to go? We spent over $1 trillion, George. 20 years. There was no good time to leave.
But if there's no good time, if you know you're going to have to leave eventually, why not have everything in place to make sure Americans to get out, to make sure our Afghan allies get out, so we don't have these chaotic scenes in Kabul?
Number one, as you know, the intelligence community did not say back in June or July that, in fact, this was going to collapse like it did. Number one.
They thought the Taliban would take over, but not this quickly.
But not this quickly, not even close. We had already issued several thousand passports to the SIVs, the people, the translators, when I came into office, before we had negotiated getting out at the end of August. Secondly, we're in a position where what we did was we took precautions. That's why I authorized that there be 6,000 American troops to flow in to accommodate this exit, number one. And number two, provided all that aircraft in the Gulf to get people out. We pre-positioned all of that, anticipated that. Now, granted, it took 2 days to take control of the airport. We have control of the airport now.
Still a lot of pandemonium outside the airport.
Well, there is, but look, but no one's being killed right now. God forgive me if I'm wrong about that, but no one's being killed right now. We got 1,000, somewhere 1,200 out yesterday, a couple thousand a day, and it's increasing. We're going to get those people out.
But we've all seen the pictures. We've seen those hundreds of people packed into a C-17. We've seen Afghans falling.
That was 4 days ago, 5 days ago.
What did you think when you first saw those pictures?
What I thought was we have to gain control of this. We have to move this more quickly. We have to move in a way in which we can take control of that airport. And we did.
But you don't think this could have been handled, this exit could have been handled better in any way? No mistakes?
No, I don't think it could have been handled in a way that we're We're going to go back in hindsight and look, but the idea that somehow there's a way to have gotten out without chaos ensuing, I don't know how that happens. I don't know how that happened.
So for you, that was always priced into the decision?
Yes. Now, exactly what happened, I was not priced in, but I knew that they're going to have an enormous. Look, one of the things we didn't know is what the Taliban would do in terms of trying to keep people from getting out. What they would do.
All troops are supposed to be out by August 31st. Even if Americans and our Afghan allies are still trying to get out, they're going to leave?
We're going to do everything in our power to get all Americans out and our allies out.
Does that mean troops will stay beyond August 31st if necessary?
It depends on where we are and whether we can ramp these numbers up to 5,000 to 7,000 a day coming out. If that's the case, they'll all be out.
Because we've got like 10 to 15,000 Americans in the country right now, right? And are you committed to making sure that the troops stay until every American who wants to be out is out?
Yes.
How about our Afghan allies? Does the commitment hold for them as well?
The commitment holds to get everyone out that, in fact, we can get out and everyone should come out. And that's the objective. That's what we're doing now. That's the path we're on, and I think we'll get there.
So Americans should understand that troops might have to be there beyond August 31st.
No, Americans should understand that we're going to try to get it done before August 31st.
But if we don't, the troops will stay.
If we don't, we'll determine at the time who's left. And if there are American forces, if there's American citizens left, we're going to stay till we get them all out.
You don't know what you're talking about, do you, sir?
Sad but true. Now, again, if you want to get the full scope, read the transcript. Some of the editing has already been complained about, helping Biden out some. I mean, the man was totally lost. He doesn't know that it was just a couple of days ago, 4 or 5 days ago. And Stephanopoulos, who went through the Black Hawk Down situation with the Clinton people, and so he knows how things go. And actually, he was probably as hard hitting as anybody from ABC, CBS, NBC, CNBC, MSNBC, CNN would be. He pressed him on some things. And Biden doesn't even know how long ago people were coming out and all this happened. And he's not even being forthcoming. They made the decision to start moving people into the country again just this last week, not as part of the overall strategy. I mean, the man's all over the place because he's just making it up as he goes. They messed up. There was intelligence on this. There was intelligence. It would happen quickly. And he continues to lie, as we showed you yesterday. He got 3 Pinocchios for saying there's 300,000 in the armed forces. There's not. Certainly not now. I mean, he keeps acting like he factored this in. No, he says he did, and then he didn't, and not like this and that. I mean, if this was Trump sitting there answering the exact same questions the exact same way, people would be livid. I mean, they would be saying this guy is messed up. But this is the good part of the interview. I'm telling you, this is Biden being with it. And we know this, so I'm not surprised. But it's like, wow. People say, wow, they messed up. Yeah, they did. But see my thought. I can't prove this. I hadn't had any inside information on this. I think they let Biden do this on his own because they thought he knows about this. So he planned it. He went along with it. He keeps taking credit for it. I don't think they were told to get out. I don't think it was a big deal to the ones actually pulling the strings for the regime. He wanted to do it. He's already elevated incompetent people to lead the Defense Department. And he interjected his expertise. Well, that's blown out the window. I mean, come on. What's he an expert at? He can't even answer a question. So he can come up with these answers. Yeah, do this, do that, and everything. He can't even answer questions. And not just from a political standpoint doesn't answer questions. He can't think of how to answer the questions. So they let him do Afghanistan to feel like the president. Every now and then they give him something to do that he feels like he's accomplishing something. And this is how it turns up. And the man's at a complete loss. And everybody's running, trying to cover this and that. And what a mess. Europe seen him. They already saw enough at that meeting he had. Remember, went on for 6 weeks in his head. You know, we don't even know what's going on in this man's head. Can't recall this. Oh, no. Nobody said keep troops in. They were split on that. Well, if they're split, then somebody said we should keep some troops in country. How is that? How does that even not make sense? Oh no, they were split on it. But everybody said no, just get the troops out. But they were split on it. We know there was intelligence. The intelligence agencies have said they're all denying it now. Anyway, we are going to look at this maddening effect. Anyway, they let Joe have it, and this is what Joe can do. This is how he talks. This is stuck with Joe. Okay, we'll look at that later, maybe that. Let's just get into this, all right? Can we do that? This from National Review, and it's very good. Like I said, I had debated about just reading the whole transcript to you, but this article really kind of covered things well, I think, so I thought I would share that with you. Something is wrong with the president. Yes, we know that. We have known that. How can you not know that? But it's worse. On the menu today, the transcript of President Joe Biden's interview with ABC News' George Stephanopoulos dropped, and the president's incoherence, insistence that he was incorrectly briefed, denial that he was warned by his military advisors, and oddly low profile in the past week raised troubling questions about his ability to perform his duties, which we already had questions about. After making no public appearances for 4 days during a major foreign crisis, President Biden read a 20-minute speech off a teleprompter and did it quite badly. On Monday afternoon and took no questions, he immediately returned to Camp David. He had no events on his schedule Tuesday. On Wednesday, he gave another 20-minute speech about vaccine boosters off a teleprompter from Camp David and again took no questions. Also on Wednesday, the president set for an on-camera interview with George Stephanopoulos that did not go well. That's an understatement. According to the White House public records, Biden has had 2 phone conversations with foreign leaders in the past 10 days, one with Boris Johnson and one with Angela Merkel of Germany. Boris Johnson, of course, of Great Britain. And the Brits are very upset with Johnson, very upset with Biden. As of this writing, Biden has no public events on his schedule for today. He is scheduled to receive the president's daily briefing from the intelligence community, which never told him this could happen, I guess, according to him. According to them, they did, and all the reporters know that. That's why Stephanopoulos was pressing him. He knows they were told. He knows that. He has friends. He knows what's going on. And I have an article, even one of Obama's top defense people is saying, what in the world? But not surprised because he knows Biden. Come on. According to the Federal Aviation Administration, he is scheduled to return to his house in Delaware today. And, just an aside that means nothing, look at that interview closely. That man's in a tanning booth or something. He's got the little white circles around his eyes and everything. Everybody picked on Trump. I don't care if he tans. I don't care if he's in Delaware. I don't care if he's at Camp David. He should be in Delaware full time. This is a highly unusual schedule for a president during a foreign policy crisis. Yes, a president can perform his job anywhere, whether it's Camp David or his own private residence. But Biden is barely appearing in public, not saying much of anything. When he does, not answering any questions outside of his lone scheduled interview, and sounding angry when he did face questions from Stephanopoulos. Biden began the interview by insisting that the intelligence community had given him unclear and excessively optimistic answers about the state of the Afghan military and government, which reporters were asking him questions on that for a long time and saying, your own intelligence. No, I hadn't heard that. Stephanopoulos, back in July, you said a Taliban takeover, and this is only the middle of August, so we're not talking months ago. You said a Taliban takeover was highly unlikely. Was the intelligence wrong, or did you downplay it? Biden, I think there was no consensus. If you go back and look at the intelligence reports, they said it's more likely to be sometime by the end of the year. And I'm sure there were reports saying that, but also, as I've said, and I offer my services to the United States intelligence agencies because I saw this. Most people did. I even offer my services to the Biden political people. I could help you people. You people are a mess. I'm only a casual observer, and I could have done a better job on handling all this than you people have. Come on, give me about $180,000 a year. We'll talk. Really makes you wonder about people in government, doesn't it? The first problem is that there is no way to square what Biden said yesterday with his July 8th declaration that the intelligence community had not stated that the Afghan government would likely collapse. Yeah, because he's lying. He's lying, and he expects everybody to let him get away with it. Mr. President, thank you very much. Your own intelligence community has assessed that the Afghan government will likely collapse. The President, that is not true. Is it? Can you please clarify what they have told you about whether that will happen or not? That is not true. They did not reach that conclusion. Then during the Stephanopoulos interview, Biden insisted that he himself had predicted that the Afghan government would collapse by the end of the year. When? When he's talking to the wall? As he's waiting for the servants to bring Jell-O? I don't know. But you know that Senator McConnell, others say this was not only predictable, it was predicted, including by him, based on intelligence briefings he was getting. Biden, what? What did he say was predicted? Stephanopoulos. I told you the transcript's worse than the interview. Senator McConnell said it was predictable that the Taliban was going to take over. Well, by the end of the year, I said that was a real possibility, but no one said it was going to take over then when it was being asked. I mean, come on, people. See, they cut that out. They should have left that in, but it is ABC. The president either does not remember what he said on July 8th, or he is simply trying to gaslight everyone into, I wish we weren't using that term all the time, into believing that he did warn of the Afghan government collapsing. He never did. This morning, Douglas London, a former CIA counterterrorism chief and former member of Biden's counterterrorism working group, writes that the president is lying. Ultimately, it was assessed Afghan forces might capitulate within days under the circumstances we witness in projections highlighted to Trump officials and future Biden officials alike. So, it's like that's what was there. They're coming out because, see, the intelligence people don't like looking like they didn't know what was happening. Sometimes they get caught flat-footed, but not as often as politicians would like you to think. Biden not only dodged questions, we're used to politicians doing that. He offered a barely coherent word salad in some responses. Stephanopoulos. So when you look at what's happened over the last week, was it a failure of intelligence, planning, execution, or judgment. It certainly can't be judgment. It's all on him. The brightest foreign policy expert the U.S. has ever produced. Again, that's some of that sarcasm I throw out every now and then. Biden, look, I don't think it was it was a simple choice, George. When the Taliban, put it another way. When you had the government of Afghanistan, the leader of that government, get in a plane and taking off and going to another country, when you saw the significant collapse of the Afghan troops, we had trained up to 300,000 of them, a lie, just leaving their equipment and taking off. That was, I'm not this, that. That's what happened. That's simply what happened. What? Let's look at Steph's question again. So when you look at what happened over the last week, was it a failure of intelligence, planning, execution, or judgment? And that's his answer? Interesting. That was 4 days ago, 5 days ago, Biden interjected. No, it was 2 days ago. But that's not really what is important. What is spectacularly odd is that Biden is reacting as if he thinks Stephanopoulos was bringing up irrelevant ancient history. Yeah, I mean, we're just supposed to forget it. It's already happened. Why was Biden indignant that Stephanopoulos was asking about these horrifying sights? Perhaps most unsettling was President Biden's insistence that nothing could have been done any differently and that none of the horrors we are witnessing could have been prevented. Well, yeah, I could have done it differently. You could have done it differently. I mean, it doesn't even make sense how it was done. So you don't think this could have been handled, this exit could have been handled better in any way? No mistake, Stephanopoulos asked Biden. No, I don't think it could have been handled in a way that we're going to go back in hindsight and look, but the idea that somehow there's a way to have gotten out without chaos ensuing, I don't know how that happens. I don't know how that happened, Biden replied. And he said, oh, this won't be like Vietnam. There's not going to be any helicopters evacuating people, etc., etc. Biden is now insisting that the chaos of a Taliban takeover was inevitable, even though he stood before the country on July 8th and specifically assured the country that a Taliban takeover was not inevitable. Is a Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable? No, it is not. Why? The president, because the Afghan troops have 300 well-equipped as any army in the world and an air force against something like 75,000 Taliban, it is not inevitable. And in his defense, you can say, well, the army laid down just laid down and left. But again, they were article after article. The army was really used to being led and directed by the U.S., which wasn't there. And many of the soldiers haven't been paid. They're not. It's not like what they make it sound like. It's all very sad. It's all political problems, not problems of the Army, Marines, Air Force, Navy, whatever. Biden also said that day that I trust the capacity of the Afghan military, who is better trained, better equipped, and more competent in terms of conducting war, and the likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely. But he always knew that would happen. So he was lying then or lying now, one of the two. Probably both. Elsewhere in the Stephanopoulos interview, Biden insisted that contrary to published reports, his military advisors had not recommended keeping 2,500 troops in country. They had. It was published. I, in this show, did not focus much on Afghanistan, but in all of the controversy on all the advising and all of that, because we were going to get out even under Trump. I in no way envisioned, while I thought there would be problems, I'm like Biden, I didn't envision it being this bad because I didn't think we would be this incompetent. I mean, you knew the Taliban was going to take over and take over quickly. That was always going to happen. And he's right. If we were there 25 more years, as long as the Taliban was there, they were going to take over. Somebody was going to take over. But there were, I mean, even the defense, Secretary of Defense, his top generals, they wanted to keep 2,500 troops in Afghanistan, either at the Bagram airfield and base or somewhere. And that way that they could control things. But Biden didn't want to do that. That was argued. And that's how come Stephanopoulos, kept, wait a minute. Yeah, it was. But your top military advisors warned against withdrawing on this timeline. They wanted you to keep about 2,500 troops. No, they didn't. It was split. That wasn't true. That wasn't true. Stephanopoulos, they didn't tell you that they wanted troops to stay? No, not in terms of whether we were going to get out in a time frame, all troops. They didn't argue against that. See, nothing makes sense. Stephanopoulos. So no one told, your military advisors did not tell you, no, we should just keep 2,500 troops. It's been a stable situation for the last several years. We can do that. We can continue to do that. No one said that to me that I can recall. And this guy points out maybe he doesn't know. See, and that's the thing. Does he know what he was told? We don't know if he knows what he was told. There are notes of these meetings that can be declassified. They won't be, and we can see if, as the Wall Street Journal and other publications reported at the time and since, the president's top generals, including Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Army General Mark Milley, urged Mr. Biden to keep a force of about 2,500 troops, the size he inherited, while seeking a peace plan, a peace agreement between warring Afghan factions to help maintain stability. They wanted that. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, who previously served as military commander in the region, said a full withdrawal wouldn't provide any insurance against instability. If they did not, Biden is telling the truth, and there's been an insane effort by Pentagon brass leaking that they're warning the president about certain dangers and then not doing so in the meetings. There is a third possibility, of course. Biden genuinely does not remember what was said and recommended to him in a meeting several months ago. And I think that's highly likely, but it's also likely that the man is a what? What could the man be? Where are you? Where are you guys? I need you. Come on, step up. What could the man? Maybe he's just a what? My money is on both. He doesn't know and he's also a liar. But I have watched him a long time. There's no way you can ever have watched and kept up with Joseph Biden and think he's an honest man. Come on. Joe Ralston, no knee-jerk critic of Biden, was appalled. This is so bad. No mistakes, no responsibility, no contrition. My God. The obvious answer to why Biden rarely appears on camera or takes questions is because every time he does it, he inflicts more damage upon himself and his agenda. The president, whose empathy is endlessly touted, now seems cold and dismissive when asked about Afghans desperately crowding into American planes or falling to their deaths. He's always cold and dismissive. It's just they lie to us, and oh, he cares so much. He's the most caring president ever. Thought that was Bill Clinton, by the way. I feel your pain. Excuse me. All of the available evidence indicates that the president ignored the warnings of his foreign policy team, withdrew the armed forces before evacuating the civilians, gave up Bagram Air Base, and is now in a large-scale foreign crisis that is mostly the result of his own choices. Exactly. There is no good defense to be made, so in corner, the president invoked his late son's military service in the Stephanopoulos interview. I mean, that was just weird. Stephanopoulos. I think a lot of Americans and I even a lot of veterans who served in Afghanistan agree, and this wasn't in the tape that we saw, with you on the big strategic picture. Yes, they believe we had to get out, but I wonder how you respond to an Army Special Forces officer, Javier McKay. He did 7 tours. He was shot twice, Purple Heart winner. He agrees with you. He says we have to cut our losses in Afghanistan, but he adds, I just wish we could have left with honor. Biden, look, that's like asking my deceased son Bo, who spent 6 months in Kosovo and a year in Iraq as a Navy captain and then as an Army major. He doesn't. And I'm sure he had regrets coming out of out of Iraq. Wow. He had regrets to what's how it's going, but the idea, what's the alternative? The alternative is, why are we staying in Afghanistan? President turned 79 in November. He last released a summary of his health condition in December 2019. In May, a White House spokesman said Biden had not had a medical checkup or taken a physical this year, but that he would by the end of the year. There have been no updates on the president's health since. There is a little question of how come we don't have visitor logs from who visits him when he's in Delaware, and I can tell you why. Because some of the main visitors are doctors trying to keep this man going, and they don't want that out. Yes, you can take that to the news and report it. It will stand its ground if they will ever release the visitor logs. Back on July 26, John Ellis astutely analyzed how it was acceptable to acknowledge Biden's age and mental condition if you use certain euphemisms. Meaning, don't just say it, but kind of work around the edges. Somewhere along the way of the last few years, Biden transitioned from young old to old. Veteran reporters describe the transition in code. He's lost a step or two, or he's losing something off his fastball. You're not supposed to talk about it. If you do, and you're a Democrat, you're scolded for aiding and abetting the enemy. If you do and you're a Republican, or God forbid a MAGA voter, you're a horrible hate monger trying to overturn the results of a free and fair election, and you probably watch Fox News to boot. Problem is that it's there for all to see. Pretending not to see it is untenable. Well, scoot over. Something is wrong with President Biden, and we are all being asked to pretend we don't notice. Yeah. Scary, ladies and gentlemen. Most of us didn't realize at the time that when Obama pulled, this is just an aside, U.S. forces out of Iraq, he also pulled out all our ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. So when ISIS began its dramatic advance across the Middle East, all we had going was satellite intelligence, not much help against fighters who dress like everyone else and roll around in Toyotas, which Toyota has tried to distance themselves from the Taliban, who's driving around in Toyotas. In a region of the world teeming with U.S. military and intelligence assets, Iraq has become a black hole. No AC-130s, no helicopters, no drones, no special forces, no regular soldiers within hundreds of miles. That's what the over-the-horizon strategy looked like in Iraq. Those assets all need one local operating base, and we had none. Satellites and supersonic aircraft were of no help against ISIS. And in Afghanistan, we don't even have an embassy there anymore. We have no way to keep up with anything, and yet we are going to maintain over-the-horizon control. Ladies and gentlemen, I said we've all known something's wrong with Joe. It's no big surprise. But he's deteriorating rapidly. This is of great concern. And it's very sad. Again, I urge you, read the ABC News transcript. It's just, and maybe I have another theory. You're interested in Danny Theory Day, Thursday Theory Day. How about that? I think part of them, they're wanting him to go out and do this so they can have an excuse to get rid of him. They know there needs to be a change made. They just, at the same time, they don't want Harris stepping in to be president even for a day. So they are working on all this and trying to get it sorted out. In the meantime, the world and the country is in turmoil. No one, maybe us, we'll know a few things, won't we? As we look into some God formation, some inside information that, good grief, nobody, maybe I should start giving intelligence briefings, hoping that they'll pass it on to Biden since nobody's telling him the truth, huh? The current conflict is how, in the team, their discussions, is how to move back to respect. Well, the first way you can move back to respect is get rid of Biden. But it won't work if you bring in Harris. Some say to push on, take few questions, just let Biden act all resolute, knowing all will pass. You know, just hold the ground, keep saying we didn't mess up. Worked for Obama all the time. The other thought is to veer back to the spending bills and try to change the message to a positive. So they're trying. They know they've got a disaster. Now, Susan Rice is very upset and upset over the messaging. She wants a concrete plan to be marked up and all to be on that message. She is not happy with the current effort and wants the team to get it together. She is putting the blame on Ron Klain, whom the committee, as we told you before we took our little vacation, was putting more responsibility on him, wanting him to take the lead on things, and it upset her. And so now she's standing up saying, look what Klain has done. You let him have more responsibility and the whole world is falling apart. The whole world knows we're a joke now, and Biden, you know, they're wondering if he can tie his shoelaces without tying them together. I can show you things from Europe everywhere. They're like, what is this? Mr. Foreign Policy himself. But they did get it together on the messaging once she stood up and started taking over. We'll take just a little bit longer, so if you can hang on. If not, we understand. Have a good rest of the day. Biden administration gets on the same page after days of finger pointing on Afghanistan. And even Stephanopoulos noted this. We knew this last night. Of course, it's when we get our inside information. Washington, it's taken them a few days, but the Biden White House, Pentagon, and intel community now finally appear to be on the same page when it comes to Afghanistan. And that's what upset her, not what happened, because, you know, she was the one that went out with the message on Benghazi, and at least, even though they were just outright lying to everybody, they were on the same page. And that upset her greatly that this part was so messed up. The Afghan military government collapse was faster than they anticipated, they say. And chaos was always inevitable once the United States withdrew from Afghanistan. Here was Joint Chiefs Chairman Mark Milley yesterday. I am very familiar with the intelligence, and in war nothing is ever certain, but I can tell you that there are not reports that I am aware of that predicted a security force of 300,000 would evaporate in 11 days from 6 August to 16 August with the capture of 34 provinces and the capital city of Kabul. Probably they never said it like that because, again, there's not 300,000 security forces, but there was intelligence on that. We heard it before. And there were people asking to keep people there, including him himself. Here was a statement from a senior U.S. intelligence official per NBC's Mike Mernoli. We consistently identified the risk of rapid collapse of the Afghan government. We also grew more pessimistic about the government's survival as the fighting season progressed. This was less an issue of Afghan military capabilities and more a reflection of Afghan leadership, cohesion, and willpower. That said, the Afghan government unraveled even more quickly than we anticipated. Yep, so he's saying it without saying it, huh? And here was President Biden in his interview with ABC. The idea that somehow there's a way to have gotten out without chaos ensuing, I don't know how that happens. Then you shouldn't be president. With congressional hearings coming, this might be the safest ground politically and message-wise for the Biden administration. Yes, there was intelligence that the Afghan government military could collapse, but nothing saying it would happen this fast. And yes, there's been plenty of televised and reported chaos, but there was always going to be chaos from any withdrawal. Was chaos inevitable in Afghanistan or not? But there is one big hole in Biden's argument that chaos was always inevitable, because it wasn't. He wasn't saying that a month ago when he was touting the size of the Afghan government's army. Nobody was saying that. This was going to be as smooth as silk, if not smoother. The Afghan troops have 300,000 well-equipped as any army in the world, and an air force against something like 75,000 Taliban. A Taliban takeover is not inevitable. Or when he also was dismissing comparisons to the U.S. withdrawal from Vietnam. There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of an embassy of the United States from Afghanistan. Or when he was saying it was unlikely the Taliban would take full control of the country. But the likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely. If chaos was always priced into the U.S. withdrawal, then Biden should have said that before the chaos happened. Yeah, and so that's for another day if we continue on this line. So, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, they got on message. The problem is the main person giving the message can't even put a coherent sentence together. God help America. Pray for the country. Pray for one another. Thank you for watching. We do appreciate that more than we could ever say. It means a lot to us. And if you will, feel free to share it and tell someone else, even if it's just to laugh at me. At least they'll watch it, maybe get some good news in them. Or, no, this isn't good news. What am I saying? Maybe get some correct news in them. Anyway, God bless you. Thank you. We will see you tomorrow.